In Webflow and in web development in general, there are multiple ways to achieve each effect that you're trying to do. And each way of doing things has its own pros and cons. So in this video, I want to show you 4 different ways to create scroll interactions so that you're familiar with the different options that you have and you learn how to pick which one is right for the different situations in which you're in. So let's get started with this navigation. In the previous video, we saw that we had to deal with this white logo on a white background, but the component variance is not enough because even in this page, we're going to scroll and get to this area here where we have white background. So we got to do something about this navigation. I think that as we're starting to scroll, we need to give this whole navigation a little bit of a background and make sure that the logo and buttons are always readable. So one way to do that is to tie in this scroll interaction to the page as we're scrolling. So once we're starting to scroll, affect what's happening here. So let's see one way of doing this. I'm going to double click here just so that we can select the navbar, which is the element that we want to affect. We want to change its background. Now, in this case, we want to affect the page because we want to make sure that the background is changing when the page is scrolling. Now, previously, when we created interactions like the FAQ, it was just like something happened and we're playing an animation just linearly playing it. But in this case, you can see we have this special icon here, continuous interaction, which means that the animation continuously changes as you're scrolling. If you're scrolling down, it plays. If you're scrolling back, it's scrolling backwards. If you're stopping in the middle, it's stopping in the middle. So this is a special kind of interaction. And let's give this a try. So we're going to create a new scroll interaction. Let's call this nav scrolls in page, or actually page scrolls. And so you can see that we've got this 0% here, which means this is we're at the top of the page, and 100% is we're at the bottom of the page. Now we're selecting the navbar, which is what we want to affect, and we're going to animate its background color. So at the beginning, it's starting out, it actually doesn't matter what color we're picking because we're going to bring the opacity back to 0, the alpha down to 0. But at the end, we do want to have something like the pitch background. Now this is a good start. Let's preview this. We can toggle live preview and I can start scrolling. And you can see as I'm scrolling, we're basically moving in percentages here. And when we're getting to the bottom of the page, we're going to get to this pitch color, which is nice, but I feel like we should be getting it when we're somewhere around here. So like 9%, we should already be getting to the pitch color. So let's just drag it up until about here, until 7 or something like that. Now let's preview that again. So now we're scrolling and right here, we're already getting the background. And that is good. When we'll be here, we'll already have a solid background. So this is great. And you can see when I'm scrolling up, the background disappear. So this is great. The only other thing I want to do is I want to turn the logo into black because there's not enough contrast. So let's select the logo and let's animate its text color. And we can start from, this is white in this case, right? So we can actually pick white from here. And then let's duplicate that and drag it to the same point where we want it and animate this into black. Let's preview that. And now you can see they're both animating. And this is actually pretty nice. This is a nice interaction. Let me save this and let's preview what we've done here. So this is a nice interaction. I like that. It goes back, it goes on. So here's a simple way to achieve what we want. However, this way has one specific problem that I can foresee for the future, which is as I'm in certain positions like this, I've got a weird color in the background, which is number one, not very readable. But also my concern is that later we're going to have to work on responsiveness. And people might click the hamburger menu or open up the menu and we'll need to have some kind of a solid background. And if I don't know exactly what color I'm in, or actually if I'm going to change the color, the background color when I'm opening up this menu, it's going to hijack this color and it's going to mess things up. So it's not good for me to be stuck in like a weird middle position for this navigation. So let's scratch that. That could be a way to do that, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to actually go ahead and delete that and delete this. And let's figure out a different way to do that. A different way to do this is we have here element trigger. If something else scrolls into view. So in this case, what we can do is we can target this next section that we have here, right? And basically use that as a trigger. When this next section comes into view, scrolls into view, then we want to trigger this animation. And then we can just play along and make sure that we're getting into the final stage of the animation, the final color. We're not stuck in like a color in between. So let's do that. So I'm selecting the section and using an element trigger when scrolls into view. And we've got this scrolls into view and out of view. And let's start with into view. Let's start an animation. We already have open, close accordion, but those are not relevant. So I'm going to do change nav BG, or let's call this just nav scroll. And we need to select the nav bar, which is what we want to animate. And in this case, background color, we just need to animate it to our pitch color. And we want to select the logo and animate that to text color of black. And of course, we want that to happen together. So I'm going to drag it on top of it. Let's preview this. Now this looks okay. I can decide whether maybe that's too slow. Maybe we can change the duration to 0.3 seconds. Okay, let's save that and let's see what happens. So I'm previewing this. Immediately it played. So not really good. Not really good for me. I guess this, maybe we can see a tiny bit or a little bit. It's almost starting to scroll in. So what we want to do is we want to create an offset. So let's have this next section scrolling in maybe like 20% before we're triggering the animation. Let's see if that works better. So I'm going to hit preview now. Now the animation is not triggering. I'm scrolling, and as it's getting to about this position, it's triggering the animation. Now it's good, by the way, because now this color is fixed, whether I go down, whether I go up. So I'm not going to have problems later on with my mobile navigation. So I'm actually quite happy with this animation. And I would go ahead and move to my other pages, like the About page, and try to apply that here as well. And on this page, I can see I'm going to have a problem because I only have one section and it's already in the page. So maybe here, what we're going to do is we're going to use the scroll out of the page. So let's go ahead and apply this scroll into view. And instead of adding the animation to scroll into view, we're going to add it to scroll out of the view. And we're going to use the nav scroll. Now, I'm never sure about the offset, if it's offset from the top or from the bottom. Let's try 80% maybe and preview that. And now I'm scrolling. And yeah, as I'm getting almost to the end of the section, it's triggering. So it works, and we can go ahead and reapply this interaction on the other pages. So this is one way to tackle interactions through the while scrolling into view, or while scrolling into view, while page is scrolling. Another super easy way to apply scroll interaction, for example, is by using Webflow's presets. So an example is I'm selecting this element and I'm going to use the scroll into view, but instead of scrolling into view and creating an animation of my own like we previously did, I can actually use one of the presets that we have here. So for example, I can use a slide, and then let's preview. You can see now I'm sliding from the left or from the bottom. I can grow big, or I can spin. Who knows why would somebody use a spin? But I definitely, whenever I use this, I use the slide from the bottom, which is very common because, you know, a lot of times you would start scrolling in pages and then you've got elements that are basically appearing. And as you saw, this is really easy to apply this. I can go ahead and I reapply this with a few clicks. Scroll into view, slide from the bottom. Now, when you've got multiple elements, you might want to create this staggering effect, like this scrolls into view and afterwards this one. So I can create, let's say this scrolls with an offset of 10%. So it only starts scrolling in after we scrolled a little bit. And it has a delay. No, let's not create a delay for this, but let's create a delay for this so that it starts scrolling or animating after this one and creates this staggering effect. So I'm going to add scroll into view, slide up from the bottom with an offset of 10% and delay of 200 milliseconds. Let's preview this. Let's actually preview both. So scrolling, and you can see that it was chuck, one after another. And this is really an easy way to start doing this. And you can create all of these cards staggering. So let's say you would create a delay of 200, 400, 600, and then the cards would just show up one after another. So this is a really easy way to apply this. The last thing I want to show you is how to very easily reapply an animation preset over and over again. So for example, we want to create a slide up animation for all of these headings. So as I'm sliding down, these will head up. But I have a lot of these kinds of headings. I've got them here. I've got them here. Maybe I want these subheadings to slide up as well. And I don't want to go and create a new animation again and again. I want a simple way to create a preset, which I can manage one time and then very easily reapply again and again. The way I'm going to do this is by selecting the element, I can go into the settings panel and have some custom attributes. Custom attributes are very powerful. We'll elaborate more throughout the course on what to do with them. For now, I'm just going to hit the plus and I'm going to give this a name of animation and then value of slide up. Now, that basically created a custom attribute, as you can see here. As it is, it doesn't do anything, right? So we're going to have to create an animation that looks up for this attribute and applies a certain interaction whenever it sees this custom attribute on this specific element. So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to head into the interactions panel. And for this, we're actually going to select the interaction with the GSAP, the new panel here. And we're going to create a scroll trigger. Let's call this slide up. And as a trigger, you can see here by default, it's selecting the class of text center and reapplying this interaction. That's not what we want. We want to look for an attribute. So I'm going to select an attribute that is animation. Now you see that it doesn't have an animation. So we're basically creating a new name for this and the value of slide up. So now it's just going to look for anything, any element that has the attribute of animation slide up and going to reapply this interaction. Now, as I've mentioned in the previous video, GSAP is way more elaborate. It has a lot of options here to see when the animation is going to start and scroll, whether it's going to scrub or trigger. I'm just going to leave them as it is right now. And I'm going to go to the action. So for an action, I've got a bunch of presets here as well, and also custom animation. To keep things simple, all we want to do is slide up, and we've got a preset for that. So I'm going to click it. And now you can see we have this bar to preview the animation. It's okay. We can make it nicer. Let's change the duration to 0.5 maybe, and the easing into maybe power out 3. So it starts very fast and then slowly slows down. Let's preview this. Yeah, now it's nicer. Now you can also see these markers that basically tells you when the animation is going to start and when it's going to end. And the other thing that you're seeing is that this animation is a scrub animation, meaning as I scroll up, it goes back and forward. We're basically playing that. It's not what I want in this case. So let's go back into the trigger and just make sure that it doesn't scrub on scroll. It just triggers the action. Let's preview this right now. Actually, let's set this to preview this way and see if that works. And you can see that now it slides up very nicely. We still have these preview markers which tell us when this is going to start the scroll animation. So let's go here and hide these scroll markers. I'm going to select the trigger and then hide these scroll markers. We don't need to see them anymore. So basically what we have right now is something that's triggering for any element that has this custom attribute, animation slide up. So now we can get out of the interactions panel and we can look for other elements like this one, and we can just go here and add animation slide up, or pick this element, for example, go here into the custom attribute. This one already I created one for it, animation slide up, and let's see what that's going to do. Let's preview that, and I'm going to scroll, as you can see, and these animations are applied. And I can try that again. And you can see that this is a way to create one preset. For example, right now we've got animation slide up. Of course, I can create slide down. I can create even more fancy animation. And it's very, very easy to now go to any page that you want, select something, and then add the custom attribute, animation, slide up, and you're basically done.